out the game.
And that is something that we have seen from G2, is that improvement post-Rift Rivals, multiple weeks in a row where they have looked back to form, I think we can safely say. Now, Misfits, is this the start of a resurgence? Is this the start of Misfits really showing the top teams that they can contend? And new patch, teams have not played in a long time. There are a lot of question marks.
Exactly, and they got to start now because we're like 2 weeks away from playoffs, and that's where you really got to peak. I think Misfits Gaming need to show something very positive the next 2 weeks for us to start really believing they can make a run for the final. Let's see though with these bans, no surprise on the red side. Caitlyn is still left open. That is a standard ban that we're looking at now as the third ban, unless you want to give Zven Caitlyn, which is not always a smart thing to do.
Definitely not. It is going to be banned away, and I like G2's strategy of banning a lot of these engaged supports, kind of taking them off the board. We look at IgNar as a player. This is the reputation that he has built for themselves. And G2, interestingly enough, opting for the Kalista first pick here.
I mean, I think Kalista first pick is super good. It's also a nice takeaway from Hansama, who actually showed up on Kalista last time. I really like the Cho'Gath ban from G2 as the last one on blue side, because it means now that there were like 3 OPs left in terms of Cho'Gath, Caitlyn, and Kalista. By banning Cho'Gath, Misfits Gaming either had to trade Kalista for Caitlyn, which is not a trade they want to take, or just ban away the Caitlyn and actually surrender this Kalista without getting a whole lot in return. But they do want to play Rakan. You can see the graphic down the bottom right here. IgNar needs to be on a champion that can create picks. A champion that can engage, start fights, and he's getting it here.
And we look at it, the Thresh, the Blitzcrank, those are the 2 champions that he was able to find wins against G2 with. Different meta now. Blitzcrank not quite as prominent, but Rakan as prominent as ever. And now the Maokai as well to back it up on the side of Misfits Gaming.
So the Maokai here being set up by the Rakan. You already have your hard engage from Rakan specifically, so follow-up engage is great from the Maokai. Hovering Janna right now. It's one of their picks last week. I wrote on Twitter saying I really want to start seeing in Europe because I think she actually adds a lot of value in these late game team fights. Seems like we will not get her just yet.
Taking their time with the support pick. They can obviously see what Misfits are trying to play, so they do know the matchup that they're facing down, maybe wanting to wait to see what AD carry they'll be matched against.
Woo!
But it is going to be the Janna coming in, so the Gnar, the Janna, the Kalista. Bot lane already sorted out, and the top laner locked in as well.
Yeah, what you really want to do with these Janna comms is you want to have 2 tanks, you want to have a mage in the mid lane, and then of course you want to just have a traditional standard AD carry. And then the idea behind it is that you have a strong front line that's very hard to kill, and you have a back line that deals more damage than the enemy team's back line. And if you then try and kill them, well, Janna just disengages straight away.
And I'm going to be honest, talking about backlines that do more damage. Xayah, mid to late game, can be a true terror. Often harder for Kalista to get out that reliable damage. Does not itemize early crit chance.
So then we're looking at PerkZ to be the man who can bring the damage from the mid lane in these late game team fights. Misfits right now, great engage. The kind of composition they need to play if they want to close out games, because Misfits are not a team that is very good at setting up the clean, slow pushes into beautiful flanks, and we all just talk about Korean macro right there. No, they're the kind of team who wants to run it down mid lane and just force a fight on you. And they can't do it with this kind of comp.
Do have the opportunities to engage. Interesting that both teams opted for the same roles outside of the potential for that Maokai flex pick in the first phase, so bans. Pretty much everything is open to be banned away on either side. Cassio going to be taken away from G2, not looking to give it over to the hands of Misfits. Jarvan as well, interestingly banned despite the Gnar being locked in.
Yeah, taking it away from Trick. Clearly expecting him to play it as a jungler. Gragas also removed. So Sejuani is still available for Trick if he wants a tanky jungler. That is my prediction for his pick. I think Xayah can work as well. Not as impactful in team fights, but much better early game and can still be a bit of a front line in the late game when you just build pure tank. So I think those are the kind of the 2 options, Sejuani and Xayah. If it fits my idea of double tank, strong late game mage, and then Janna to protect them as this full composition from G2 eSports.
And if they want to follow what we've seen so far from this style of composition and what we've seen so far from 7-15, now a pick that was incredibly successful for G2 last time they played Misfits was Trick on the Kazakhs. The only one that they found in that series was him snowballing, but a pick that has fallen out of favor despite his individual, fantastic performances on it. And I think that they're probably aware, similar to how you are, Deficio, that Sejuani, one of the last big highlight picks coming in, but Misfits showing us that Maokai is going to be in the jungle and sending that Camille into the top lane.
So Camille being actually picked against the Gnar. I think it's an okay matchup for both sides. No one is really going to be too afraid of that in the early game. Sejuani, as we talked about, for Trick being hovered right now. And then we're gonna get that mage that can deal some serious damage in the late game. And Taliyah, do not get fooled by like the idea behind Taliyah and her roaming. She can actually kill tanks very effectively.
But she's also not important because there's an Orianna, which is the classic late game damage output.
It is. And now let's just get that, you know, Sejuani or Xayah from Trick to round out the composition. And then you have that double front line with Kalista, Orianna as the damage dealers, and Janna. Her only job is whenever Misfits hard engage onto the backline of G2 eSports, she disengages, keeps PerkZ and Zven alive, and then slowly but surely, G2 eSports will take down the front line of Misfits.
And already some very positive interactions between the Janna and the Camille can push her out of her own ultimate, taking away the Hextech ultimatum. So I think surprising to see Misfits prioritize the Camille coming in here, but I mean, if you can catch the Janna, if you can throw out the Hextech ultimatum as the Monsoon comes out, you can cancel any of that knockback and just lock down this threat.
Syndra was still left open. PowerOfEvil, he always likes to play that champion. Fine matchup for him in the mid lane as well. But Misfits Gaming running the classic 1-4. So the 1 is Alphari, who is trying to become a split pusher in the side lane. And then the 4-man group, Maxlore, PowerOfEvil, Hansama, and IgNar playing together. Idea is that Alphari in the late game can maybe become a bit of a bully, see if he can beat Expect 1v1, and then the 4-man group can just stay as a strong unit and hold down mid lane, potentially even look for a catch if G2 eSports are out of position. But obviously for Misfits, they have to deal with Janna. That can be a problem. When you're running a composition that really just wants to all in, Janna can just ruin your day.
And additionally, we look at the early laning phase. Kalista, a champion who thrives at early aggression, having the shield, having that AD steroid, could make it very difficult for Hansama and IgNar, but they have the luxury of, you know, the hard engage options coming in this bottom lane. See the coaches now shake hands. Folks, head on over to Twitter. This is the time. At LO Esports is the place. Hashtag G2 win, hashtag MSF win. Maybe throw a couple LinkedIn invites out there too. Let everybody know that this is going on. I've been getting spammed with a lot of LinkedIn.
Oh,
so I thought I'd share the sadness with the world.
I'm getting spammed by a certain type of bots on Twitter as well. Do you have the same problem?
What?
Finding like a 1-year-old
bots. Bots. Got it. I heard of you. All right, folks. Here we go. Misfits versus G2. The battle for playoff contention, the battle for seeding could be all important for both of these teams as we get ready, as we get geared up for game 1.
Now, I want to look at this bottom lane, Drakers. Not specifically the 2v2 lane, but more what can happen if Misfits actually play around it. I think Janna is one of the champions pre-level 6 that is super easy to gank and kill. Even after level 6, if you can actually force an ulti on cooldown, you can just return gank it, and you have tons of engage from IgNar, follow-up from Maxlore if he goes to this bottom lane. So I think Misfits actually might find an opening on the bottom side to try and take down Mithy. But you also got to respect the fact that Camille versus Gnar top lane. Explosive matchup, one guy gets an advantage, he's going to be annoying for the following 20 minutes.
You have to wonder what the mind games are like between the two junglers right now. If they both go top lane, it mitigates. One goes top, one goes bottom. Suddenly, it's very complicated how you're going to play across the map.
I just think it's much easier for Maxlore to have an early game impact in this game here. I don't feel like there's that much setup for Trick in the early game to really go and gank any lanes, where Maxlore brings his own, obviously very easy point-and-click CC. But also if you look at the lanes, like, you got a stun top lane from your Camille, you got a stun mid lane from your Syndra, even though I don't actually want to see him go mid lane too often. And then bot lane, you have the Rakan engage with, of course, follow-up CC from Xayah. So I think there's a lot of lanes here from Maxlore where they can chain lock down a target and actually try and go for these early kills. So I really want to see Maxlore be active in the early game. I think Trick is okay if he just tries to counter gank and farm.
Well, and it's good that you bring that up because last time we saw these teams play in Week 3, Maxlore was sort of the crux for getting the team ahead across multiple lanes. It was his Lee Sin performance that was so clutch in the first game that let it be, honestly, just a disgusting one-sided snowball in favor of Misfits. In G2, Trick is performing better now. We can't take that away from them, but they have to be careful not to fall into the same traps they did last time these two teams faced.
Exactly, and Trick is mainly performing better in the mid to late game. What he's doing different in the early game now compared to MSI is that he's not opting into super risky ganks where he just dies for no reason and gives the opponent team like a massive gold advantage, and suddenly his laners are complaining that, you know, you just fed double buff.
That was game 3 of the last series.
Like that kind of stuff happened quite a lot for Trick, but he doesn't have to do that anymore. He can just farm, he can focus on vision, and then get to mid to late game where he's good. And I think that's been a big change for him in G2 eSports, not having to rely on that early game.
Well, the aggressive engage, quick level 2 comes in from IgNar. Nice timing for the Misfits bottom lane, but just going to be a small trade advantage on the back of that one. No potential for the all-in, but there is an ignite in the back pocket of IgNar. They have to be ready for the potential plays. We talked about the potential to snow bot lane, but it looks like it's going to be the top lane. Expect flashing after safety. Tactical sweep comes in. Maokai moving forward. Expect just going to walk this one out.
And we already see it. You know, Camille sets up just one little stun. Expect knows. Jungler is here. Needs to flash away bot lane.
And repeat, the ignite does go down. Zven is flashing for his life. Mithy, the Janna, just not doing much in this early laning phase. So Zven just has to suffer in that exchange.
There's very little you can do as Janna very early on in the laning phase. You just have to kind of accept that your AD carry will get jumped quite a few times. Trick will find Maxlore right here. Tank via tank.
That's the red buff though. Maxlore is going to get stunned up, a little bit of extra percentage health damage with the empowered sapling to make this a bit easier. PowerOfEvil, he's already burned the ghost. He's moving for a little bit forward. Dark Sphere. Force of Will, where's it going to be? Throws it out. That's the stun. PerkZ moving in. Just shielding to come down. No blood spilled yet, but a lot of early trading.
Yeah, I like the aggression here from the teams. We talked about Maxlore needing to be aggressive. Already ganked the top lane. We talked about the bottom lane from Misfits having a lot of kill pressure. Actually, in the early game, good pressure from them. PerkZ, though, because he just stayed in the mid lane. Happy to just push the lane forward, get a small level advantage until PowerOfEvil picks up these minions. Won't really do a whole lot for the actual lane, though.
Misfits, unfortunate scoreline there on red side. 1 win, 7 losses. But now, Gnar actually caught out here. Grand entrance comes to interrupt. 3 stacks. Not going to follow up there, not going to look to stun him up.
And sadly for Misfits, they have red side twice in this series, starting on it already in this game. And as you said, they only won 1 game. It is not easier now than it used to be because you are often forced to ban Zac, Elise, Caitlyn, maybe a Kalista, maybe a Cho'Gath. Like, there's some of these very clear S-tier picks that makes it hard for red side to win the pick and ban phase in the first phase at least. Obviously, you still got the counter picks later on, but early on you have to just invest these bans into clear S-tier picks. Let's see top lane, Alphari. Forced that flash earlier. Maxlore just gone back to base. We're kind of waiting for him to maybe tack to move towards the top lane, potentially try and gank expect again if the lane is pushing back.
And it's interesting too how wide open the top lane meta feels compared to a lot of other roles. We're seeing so much variety in terms of carry potential. But one thing I want to bring up is just kind of the difference between these two teams right now in the standings, because while Misfits do have the potential to catch G2, it's a bit of a hard battle, and this win could be everything. You can see right now on the bottom of your screen, 5-5. There is some small trading on the top line versus 7-3, but I think we're going to have to hold that thought, because Trick is on the way. Actually, it's just going to be the flash out.
Yeah, so the standings right now in Group A, while they look like it's almost locked in place, like a win here from Misfits would put a lot of pressure on G2, because G2 eSports still play Fnatic at the end of the regular season. That could be 2 losses for G2 eSports, and suddenly Misfits Gaming are sitting, you know, and tying them here for 2nd place. You can see there the upcoming schedule. So G2 eSports losing this game would be a disaster for them. Not only won't they be able to catch, you know, Fnatic for that 1st place very easily, and they might potentially even lose that 2nd place, because remember, Misfits already beat them once.
Definitely the case. PowerOfEvil, though, just looking to disengage in the mid lane, and strength schedule is so crucial, and it's interesting how, as Misfits, you have the power to kind of put your destiny in your own hands if you win this series, because then you just win out and you're in a comfortable spot. But if you lose, if you fall behind at all, you no longer have any agency over whether or not you're getting 3rd or 2nd, and that has to feel horrible, especially for a team with such clear goals coming into this year, coming into this season.
I think it's also just, it's about confidence and momentum as well. Like, we're 2 weeks away from playoffs. This is the time where you need to start beating the other top 6 teams if you're actually going to believe as a team that you're strong enough to make the final. Let's just pretend this is a 2-0 G2 stomp. Well, Misfits obviously are not going to feel great moving forward. They're not going to be like, oh yeah, we're totally super good, you know. They're going to be like, no, oh, so many things are wrong, we need to fix them.
And that's the thing where strength of schedule plays against you a little bit, because beating Roccat, while Roccat have shown some upset performances, NIP in a similar fashion, that doesn't give you the same confidence that taking down a team like G2, taking down a team like Fnatic would, heading into playoffs, knowing that you can beat, you know, really, I think we can safely say the top 2 teams in Europe in many respects.
Yep, exactly. It's really about like getting confirmation that a lot of the things you're working on as a team, as my voice gives up for a moment right there, that was not a good thing, but you need that confirmation as a team that the improvement you're making is actually the correct one. That the playstyle you've figured out that you need to play is the correct one as well for your team to beat other teams in Europe. Otherwise, you panic. You're like, damn, okay, we need to change something. We need to play early game junglers, we need to play whatever different supports because we're not winning. And that's not always a good thing.
No, definitely not the case. And now as we check in on the game, level 6 is starting to come out. We've noted this as a major point in the game. Zven, once he gets level 6, the Fate's call to protect the Janna, similar level 6. On Sama, though, going to have to flash out. A lot of aggressive ganks coming in from both sides this game, but only summoner spells traded back and forth. Maxlore, though, now completely uncontested if he wants to get an invasion down on the top side. PowerOfEvil, though, may have the mana advantage, but definitely not the case with Light.
Oh!
So close to going down. One more auto. The passive from the Clockwork Windup could have just killed him right there.
Yeah, PowerOfEvil, he said in the opening feature that it was Caps #1, and then it was FebEvent, PerkZ, and PowerOfEvil all grouped together, coming in second place. Right now, PowerOfEvil, he's under pressure in this lane here against PerkZ on this Orianna. Almost dying 1v1 against him. PerkZ will get a small reward, which is the enemy blue buff. Trick will be so nice and unleash it for him. And this is a great start for PerkZ, a man who's really looking good again. And I'm so excited to see him in playoffs.
I want to know what he can provide, but also PowerOfEvil feels like he has been the center of this team. In
100%.
their wins, he's been the carry, and to see him suffer in the early game is definitely not what Misfits want. And as I was mentioning earlier, level 6 is now coming in. It feels like that bottom lane, that potential for hard engage, that opportunity for Misfits to play around, it's not gone, but it's definitely much harder now that Janna can disengage, now that Kalista can save her as well.
Exactly. That's just kind of the key thing with Janna getting that level 6. You just completely hard reset a gank or a fight. Always makes it much easier for Mithy. Maxlore did not get early boots, just went for Barmy Syndra, went the farming route. He got that first gank off against Expect. There was no follow-up gank after because Expect was also sitting with the wave just right in front of his tower for a long time. Alphari had to then flash away himself because Trick showed up, and it's the same position right now. Expect are just constantly trying to keep the lane right here and just farming. He's literally just farming.
Obviously, Camille just not strong enough to dive IgNar reliably right now, so Expect has the safety under his tower. If it's a longer lane, maybe Camille can just continue to all-in. But even itemization for now, it's going to be interesting to see who can actually take an advantage here to Fischio, because I feel like if Gnar gets the Black Cleaver Frozen Mallet ahead of Alphari getting 2 items, that's just not good for a Camille. Camille will just get run down, but on the same, on the opposite hand, Triforce, maybe one of the Hydra items, Alphari's going to be able to clean up Expect.
Yeah, always have to remember how squishy Expect is in mini Gnar here. Alphari looking for that trade.
Gnar does throw in the ultimate wall up, comes in, has the ult, throws him out of the Hextech ultimatum. Nice play coming in from Expect to get out of that one.
Stays alive here. Flash used by PowerOfEvil when he joined the fight here, but this is what we get to see from this matchup. Alphari looks for the mini Gnar, wants to all in Expect. Sadly for him, Expect actually was halfway towards the Mega Gnar very quickly and got it ready in time to also throw Alphari away from him. So PowerOfEvil, sadly for him, tries to get back in this game by roaming to the top lane, ends up using Flash, and didn't actually get anything from it. So now he just gets even further behind in his own lane.
And on the one hand, you have to respect Misfits for trying to shut down this top lane. On the other hand, you're going up against a guy who's been playing better and better every week. And Alphari, a top laner who has often been struggling. You can see Expect after Rift Rivals, a monster. Before Rift Rivals, I'll say mediocre. Not a great top laner at the time. But now, this guy is playing out of his mind every game, and for Alphari to start to fall behind here, that could be brutal.
I think just the key thing for Expect to really succeed is just when the meta is focused on the top laners, actually playing with the team a lot. I don't think he's still smart enough to be the sole split pusher who knows exactly when to push and when to back off. But when he can group up with Mithy and G2, I see a lot of awesome plays from him in terms of, flanking, knowing exactly what to do in a team fight. We all seen the moment at MSI, believe me, going for that big engage. Like, I really feel like Expect looks good when he's playing with the team. And he ends up actually being exposed a little bit when it's a pure 1v1 top lane meta, which is not the case right now. Alphari would love to make it a pure 1v1 in this game, but I don't think Expect and G2 will allow that.
Yeah, and there's the potential if he can find advantage to start to split push, to force somebody to answer. Expect PerkZ potentially. But now as we check in, 12 minutes into the game, really no major advantages. G2 small gold advantage. Misfits, though, secure an early Ocean Drake. And they should be happy with that one. And you look at the itemization, nothing out of the ordinary, nothing crazy here. Everyone playing to their strengths, and it seems like both teams content to just extend this early game.
And while there's good scaling on both sides, I think a big advantage for G2 will be the late game Orianna compared to the late game Syndra. PowerOfEvil against Janna shield, against defensive items later on, will struggle with his one-shot combo. where an Orianna shockwave so often is like the big turning point in a fight. Let's see what happens top lane. Both junglers here.
Trick moving forward. That's just going to be Alphari going gone. This is all too easy with the flash out, the tack sweep. That man is so aggressive. Maxlore now running for his life. They're both going to make it out, but 2 flashes burned on the side of Misfits.
No one's allowed to die today. Everyone is very close, but no one's actually dying. PowerOfEvil!
Looking for the 1v1 in the mid lane and wanting to put himself back on top. PerkZ is hungry for the kill. Where's the clockwork wind-up? That's gonna do it. First blood for G2.
Solo kill in the mid lane after PowerOfEvil used his flash top lane. Didn't get anything for his roam. He's falling further behind in his lane. PerkZ right now, he's taking over the game. And G2 eSports will also get first tower top lane.
This is everything that they want, from almost dead even to about a 2K, even more gold lead coming in for G2. Misfits need to fire back somewhere. It has been all about the early game the last few times these teams have played, and Misfits falling behind now is a terrible sign for the team.
Let's see here. If you are Misfits, your composition, as we talked about in Champ Select, very strong 4-man group of Maxlore, PowerOfEvil, IgNar, and IgNar. Great engage, a lot of damage, especially in the mid game. You got the Rakan and the Maokai in the front. But if you're only engaging with 4 and Alphari is not able to team up with you with the guys, well then IgNar will just have to dive in and see probably a TP from Gnar appear right behind him, or a disengage from Mithy, and then the fight is kind of over. So we really need to see Alphari either take over the side lane or time his flanks and TPs with the rest of Misfits. It's been a weakness for them all split long. It's one thing they need to do here. This is just a 1v1 where the Syndra has no flash.
It's like a little star shuriken.
I like it.
Messed him up. Now, of course, PerkZ just goes in. He sees PowerOfEvil burn all of his basic abilities, and he's like, yeah, sure, you're going to get some more ultimate damage, but you can't stun me. You can only slow me down, and really good, capitalization comes in from PerkZ. But 7:15, it's a little different. One item that maybe hasn't changed as much as in the bottom lane, but it's an item that we're now seeing Mithy rush. Guys, Sightstone, don't do it. It's about Ardent Sensor now. This is insane. People have been talking about this for so long, and now we're finally seeing it.
I mean, it's just such an insane item for your AD carry. Like, all AD carries on Twitter are saying they feel like Superman, you know, when there's someone with an Ardent Sensor.
Sven was
definitely the guy who said it. I'm going to say all AD carries right now, because Sven, in this one little example, is all AD carries. But is this such a huge buff to you as a damage dealer? And so much in this game is about consistently laying down enough damage to actually kill a tank. Well, Ardent Sensor really helps you there. It doesn't really matter too much in terms of like pure burst, but when you get multiple auto attacks off, the Ardent Sensor really adds some value. And I mean, Mithy knows his role in this game as a Janna. Press shield on Zven.
Sometimes Q and also R, and very rarely W, but yes, mostly push shield.
I mean, you can get to Diamond 5 by pressing shield as Janna. It is a legit strategy. Dragos, you should try it maybe. It could help you.
The subtle encouragement and also the subtle BM. All right, well, PowerOfEvil once again getting caught out here. Unfortunately, the last 1v1 potentially could have been even, but now with a 2-level lead in favor of PerkZ as well as a massive CS advantage, there's just not a lot of hope.
I also want to talk about what PerkZ did very early on. He just instantly, actually, let's see what happens here. PowerOfEvil pop Ghost.
Nothing's going to happen.
IgNar was on the way as well, but G2 backspray. But PerkZ very early on in the lane just got tier 2 boots. Straight away tier 2 boots, even before the Hornet guys. Bot lane.
Forward. There's the disengage we talked about. Bait's call crucial to stop these fights from going against the side of G2. But
IgNar. That's disengage number 2. Both used right now. So both on cooldown, meaning Maxlore and Alphari can actually start looking around the bottom lane, at least for a small window here, where there is a chance to actually engage.
Something you talked about from the side of G2, Trick playing defensive, just looking to shut down in the early aggression. So he is here on the bot side. He knows the weakness of the bottom lane, and he is playing around it.
Everything slows down for a moment. So tier 2 boots on PerkZ super early. When you do this, it's because you want to play aggressive in lane. These boots will not offer you anything in terms of farming, but it's great with the extra movement speed and MR as well if you want to play just aggressive, if you want to fight often in the laning phase. It's allowing PerkZ to constantly reposition in lane and actually start trading with PowerOfEvil, and he even has the tenacity if he's getting stunned or rooted in a potential gank. So it's something I see quite a lot from a lot of LCK mid laners. That's like, just rush tier 2 boots. Often it's the magic penetration and just play really aggressive in lane. In enemy's faces, sure, there's no mana regen on him, so it's not for farming, it's for getting killed. Faker likes to do it, that means everyone else should also do it.
And it's a weird kind of concept. Not buying damage to trade more aggressively in lane, but the extra movement speed against a skill shot champion just makes it so easy to mitigate any potential firing back on the trades. Now Maxlore, though, maybe sensing the opportunity, maybe just setting up for Dragon. We're going to have to see what he wants to go with here.
And after Alphari fell a little bit behind in the top lane, he's kind of relegated to just sit and defend under his tower. Expect pushes the top lane, then he leaves. He goes mid lane, puts pressure on PowerOfEvil. This also makes it harder for Misfits to make a play in the bottom lane. Because Expect is already in the mid lane, he can just walk down to that bot lane in case there's a dive happening, and then counter gank it. Let's see here. Drake being started, but again, remember, Expect is already in the mid lane.
Coming down, not a lot of rage. They're immediately going on to PerkZ. That's the charm, but the chain CC is coming in. Can they kill Perk before the fight starts? He's still alive. He's still well off. Camille coming over the wall. Misfits pushing forward. Expect getting lower and lower, but the rage bar is ticking off. Neither side looking for the fight. But Mithy's going to make everybody Superman with that Ardent Sensor, and they're just going to clean up the Drake that Misfits started.
So right there, they saw Perks, but Cleanse was ready. And also not enough damage really nearby for Misfits. Alphari wasn't there instantly. PowerOfEvil wasn't in position to actually hit Perks. Expect just trying to scare them away.
Throwing out the boulder. No flash to force anything there with the ultimate. Zven now pressuring in on the bottom side. G2 not giving up a tower. This play is completely G2 favored at this point in time. If they can take the bottom lane tower as well, Misfits will have just completely lost this exchange.
They invested so much trying to kill PerkZ, and they didn't even get his flash. There was no damage around to actually follow up after the engagement IgNar and Maxlore. I want to see if we get a replay of this where PowerOfEvil was. If he could have maybe moved down in time and then just unleashed the entire combo. But in the end, PerkZ walks away, Dragon goes down, bot lane tower takes some more damage, and Alphari had to use his TP as well because he wasn't in a position to fight yet, and then the engage happened. And this is what happens so often when your top laner gets pushed into his tower and the enemy top laner can roam first. Enemy top laner can save his TP because he's already in the middle lane. He's ready to fight.
So now it's just pure advantages. Misfits are going to mix up the lane matchups, knowing that they're not quite as comfortable as they once were.
Let's see it again here. They're calling that PerkZ is out of position. They can engage. But PowerOfEvil right there, as you guys can see on your screen, he's not in range yet. Could maybe have flashed instantly to try and follow up CC and nuke PerkZ down, but Misfits did not want to try and all in. At least the damage dealers didn't want to all in after the tanks had actually already engaged. And that means PerkZ stays alive, Dragon goes down, bot lane tower falls after. Big snowball effect after losing that fight.
Definitely
this time they get him.
Yeah, may not have been the case in the Dragon fight, but Misfits fire back in the mid lane. They grab a tower in top lane as well. We talked about momentum being crucial for this team, and right now they have it in this game. Can they get anything else on the back of this?
Mithy is on the way mid lane to defend, so they will not get the tower, but they got the top lane one, as you mentioned. That's still important to try and keep up in gold, because Misfits right now, they're down 3,000 gold, and they are not a team with a lot of comebacks in the EU LCS. They so often need to be the ones winning the early game and then finding these big team fights. This time around, though, they have to play from behind. PerkZ, no cleanse, great engage this time, and while they might have saved the flashes last time, they definitely did not save the flashes this time.
They know they need to kill him. They know they need to shut him down. Does net them the tower on the top side. G2 forced to respond in the mid lane. But Misfits still suffering, as you mentioned, 2K gold down, an Ocean for an Ocean. So definitely just in a deficit, no arguing to get them out of this. And the biggest offenders right now, top lane, mid lane in terms of advantage. Very close to that frozen mallet, that terrifying point to play against Gnar.
And also great for G2 that they stayed even in the bottom lane. They were even in farm with Kalista versus Xayah. They did not lose the tower. That is always one of the concerns when you draft this Janna here. You're afraid, do we get to Dumpstead in lane, we lose early tower, and then you're behind. No, tower is still alive. Mithy with the Ardent Sensor. He's ready to do his job in these team fights, and that's kind of a problem for Misfits. It's actually not getting easier. It's only getting harder from here.
The explosive burst we saw earlier, the Hextech Ultimatum, the Syndra Ultimate, pairing together these strong kind of burstier style champions. That feels so good when you watch it on the side of Misfits, but when you can really only kill one target, and only if you burn all of your cooldowns, that is not a fight that you can win if things don't go exactly your way.
I do like the investment, though, from PowerOfEvil and saying, you know what, we actually need to start winning fights now. So he's going for a lot of flat magic penetration with the Haunting guys, trying to maximize his damage before all that late game magic resistance comes in from G2 eSports. There's obviously a little bit on PerkZ already, nothing on Zven at this point. So he will deal a lot of damage to especially the Kalista. And the Janna we can add in, because it's actually worth it to nuke her down if you can. But PowerOfEvil, he's investing in the mid game. And he really, really, really wants to find someone to get back in this game because he's still, you know, down in CS. Luckily for him, he's actually even in items.
Not a bad spot to be. We'll have to see what PerkZ picks up next time he backs, however. Global gold advantage should be in the favor of G2, given their extra tower. Farm advantage as well. Still 20 up in the favor of PerkZ. And honestly, across the board, once again, a very slow, steady game. Moments of explosive action, but both teams just looking, trying to find an opportunity where the other one is overstepping. The issue now feels like Misfits. It's a lot harder to find G2 overstepping when they have an advantage over you.
It's fun, actually. Let's talk about it after, because Baron is being started right now. This is a bit risky. They're trying to force Alphari's teleport.
Have to be careful though. Keep your eyes on Maxlore. The ultimate, the flash available. Who is he going to go for? Mithy on the outskirts looking for the disengage. Leaping onto Maxlore. If they can take down the jungler, they can take the Baron. But Ignar is not going to let it happen. It's Alphari on the backside. Hansama untouched, dishing out the damage. Misfits looking to turn the fight. Zven healing them all up. Now may not be enough though because Trick is on the hunt. Both teams backing off the 1-for-1.
That was such a risky call from G2 Esports. They were hoping Alphari would TP in early and they could just completely disengage and then get a summoner spell advantage, but Alphari, he just walked. All the Misfits knew they had time, and suddenly G2 Esports were getting engaged on from two different flanks. 1-for-1, which is definitely a small win for Misfits right here, seeing as they are still down 3,000 gold.
Yeah, when you're the team behind, you always have to be happy with those even trades. Hansama doing what he can to clear out the waves. Gnar has hit the frozen now at Black Cleaver point, may make it difficult for Alphari in the side lane, but gold advantage definitely in favor of G2. Can't take that away from him. However, the team fights, if Misfits can continue to execute well, don't appear that far behind.
Let's see it again here. So with the Janna, you really want to be next to your AD carry and your backline as often as possible. So the reposition from Zven is great. But right now, Hansama comes from one side, Alphari from another one, PowerOfEvil up north. Like, it's really hard right there for G2 Esports because they're getting attacked from so many sides. PerkZ did find his way into the fight, but it just becomes a 1-for-1. And no TP over. Zven, though, will take this Infernal Drake. Nice little win for G2 Esports. Let's see if Misfits can actually get that mid lane tower down.
PerkZ, a lot of wave clear, but has to be careful. No creep wave there to back him up means Misfits not going to be able to take the mid lane without a fight. Getting the Infernal Drake as well. Such a good boon for G2 as we move later in the game, especially on a composition you said kind of scales better in so many ways. PowerOfEvil doesn't hard fall off, but it does get harder and harder to kill those magic resistance targets. And
I think this has just been a very classic G2 game. They're actually starting Baron again because Alphari is in the bottom lane. They want him to use his teleport.
Knows he's there. Misfits waiting for their opportunity. Know that they have to contest this one.
There's a Kalista. Misfits, you gotta go.
You need to go now. They're just going to be able to take it. Instant pickup from Zven. G2 have the Baron, but Misfits are looking for the fight. Kitty Cats are coming out. PerkZ potentially in trouble in the backline, but will get peeled out. Mithy is saving everybody. Zven is still alive. The flash, the shield. He is still... There's nothing you can do. G2 are ripping through Misfits right now. No chance to win that fight.
Well, it's not over. They want PowerOfEvil.
Moving forward, one more clockwork windup. Ignar going to make it out with a grand entrance, but it's not even a grand exit. It's that tail between the legs moment.
Once again, G2 Esports, they're just forcing the Baron because they see Camille in the side lane. They're saying, Alphari, you got to teleport in here, and then you got to take a 5-on-5 team fight, which is what G2 Esports wants to do with their comp. So they're using the Baron as an engage tool, as bait, more or less. But the fact that Misfits were so slow on the trigger against the Kalista, well, that just allowed G2 Esports to pick up the Baron and then the fight.
It's not a smite battle against this Kalista. You can see the team smiting it down so that they can secure it. And Mithy in this fight, combined with Zven, saving the day. PerkZ getting engaged on. Alphari immediately knocked up, knocked back. Flash shield for Mithy. I don't even know if it's necessary, but his head is 100% in the game right now. He knows who he needs to save.
Flash shield. Save everyone. And also expect with their fantastic engage right there. Mega Gnar, two-man. Whoa. Two members in there. Yeah,
all right, we talked about PowerOfEvil being the carry for Misfits. 6k damage in that last fight.
I do believe Alphari did a little bit more damage, but I don't think it gets noticed if there's a shield on the target when he hits it. So that's why it just says 42, despite him getting at least a few hits off on PerkZ right there, but he didn't get to use his ulti. He was saving it, waiting for the Janna ulti first, to then use it after, but then the fight was already over because Expect just dove in and actually killed the backline of Misfits. So it's looking super rough for Misfits Gaming. It's looking quite fantastic for G2 Esports.
Yeah, if you're a G2 fan, you have to be happy. After dropping games to this team in week 3 to come back so dominant, Has to feel good, but G2 can't get over-aggressive here. Still tons of engaged potential on that Misfits lineup. If they get too cheeky, if they look for the aggressive dive, things could very quickly fall apart. Ooh, nice knockback coming in. Stopping expect from the aggressive engage, but G2 gonna get the tier 2 anyway. No real tools to contest that.
IgNar is on the side. He will be spotted by this ward. Very hard for him to also succeed with his hard engage due to Mithy's follow-up. Oh, sorry, Mithy's ulti. I guess technically it is a follow-up. Just knocks them away and stops the fight. But one thing I really want to talk about here was, you know, this whole like, oh, Misfits, they are discount G2 eSports according to Zven. I think there's a very, very big difference in the early game between the teams that doesn't really fit that low story. Because Misfits in the early game, they get advantages through Maxlore. When he's able to gank, especially the top and the mid lane, and actually get early kills for PowerOfEvil and for Alphari, that didn't happen in this game. G2 eSports in the early game, they get advantages through just pure laning. They don't need trick. It's PerkZ doing well 1v1. It's Zven and Mithy surviving a tough lane 2v2. That's how they tend to get these small advantages. Slowly they grind down a tower, they call Trick down, be like, hey, Trick, come down, let's finish the tower. Trick shows up, they get a tower, they start snowballing the gold advantage, and there's very, very little risk taken. So that's a massive difference between the teams, and G2 eSports, we saw PerkZ win his lane, we saw Zven and Mithy go even. They just won slowly.
And I'll say, Zven and Mithy went even early, but now G2 are putting so much into him. Look at the Ardent Censer. The Knight's Vow attached to him as well. The Athene's Unholy Grail. I have not seen a Protect the Kalista comp in a long time, sir, but it looks like we have one on our hands. Zven is going to dish out damage, and he is not going to die if Misfits aren't willing to commit everything to kill him.
So let's try and look at Misfits comp. Like, what can they do? If you can't easily jump the enemy AD carry, you often then are forced to kite back instead and say, okay, let's try and kill the tanks. The problem for them to have a Syndra who's not really designed to kill tanks very easily. She needs to kind of reach the back line, and it's much riskier for Syndra to do that compared to an Orianna who just puts a ball on the ground and stands really far away anyway. So I think if you are Misfits, you might have to rely purely on Hansama and his tank killing potential and then try and kite back. If you don't feel like you can actually kill Zven with a hard engage, you need to protect your AD carry. And Hansama adapted, picked up early Last Whisper, fully upgraded as well, so you can actually deal damage to expect and Trick. But you need long fights then as Misfits, not these quick ones.
And look, Syndra can kite really well as well, and Xayah notoriously good at kiting people out. But at the same time, Kalista's so good at chasing targets down. Gnar in Mega, Sejuani as well, so good at forcing fights. If you get hit by a single source of CC, you don't really get a kite anymore. You don't get it back up.
It's almost like G2 is showing why Janna is actually super strong in this meta, because she makes this goal of just diving the enemy backline so difficult. So you have to change and say, okay, let's kill the front line. But the front line is designed to not die. It's tanks, big, fatty tanks.
And look, Lord Dominic's, a Leandri's Torment, that's great. But if your character doesn't have some percentage max health, AP damage, or AD damage already built in, you're not a great tank killer, right? Crit scaling does give it in the favor of the Xayah the later we go. Ocean Drake gonna drop from Misfits in the meantime, but definitely a rough road for Misfits moving forward. And now, I feel like is the scariest point, because it's not about who has the stronger team fight. I think we can say that that is G2. It's who can out-execute, and that is a ton of pressure on the Misfits' shoulders.
So we're looking a lot at Hansama, and also we're actually looking at that execution part you just mentioned. Will Mithy make a mistake? Will Mithy be out of position so suddenly you can actually kill Zven or PerkZ without Mithy being there? Like, that can happen, you know, you can definitely make these mistakes here, but Mithy's been playing a pretty, like, flawless game so far, and it sucks having to rely on the enemy support being out of position for you to really dive the enemy backline. But it might also be one of the ways for Misfits back here in hoping that G2 eSports, they slip up. They make one of those mistakes that we don't see very often from them in Europe.
I mean, you mentioned it. Janna, potentially an easier road to Diamond 5, as you put it. But if you are bad at the champion, if you disengage at the wrong time, if you don't shield the right target, if you're in the wrong place, just as easy of a road down to bronze.
You don't fall as fast and hard on Janna.
It's true. We'll see.
You know, I mean, there's already, after last week, probably a lot of guys who dropped down to potentially silver bronze after trying to play Kayn mid lane. That's a faster route down than picking Janna. Soraka can also
look, guys, we're not here to help you
rank
rank up. We're here to tell you the worst ways. Don't play Kayn.
Don't try and play Kayn mid.
Janna.
It's not easy. It's really difficult.
I wonder how much ELO Vedius has lost on Kayn mid.
Probably quite a lot. keeps chain feeding in our games. Anyway, it's not about Vedius, it's about G2 and Misfits.
That's definitely the case. Next Baron, now this one feels incredibly important because we haven't checked it on the gold in a long time. We know G2 have been dominating the game, but itemization compositions in their favor, sure. 9K gold in their favor as well. That is a huge advantage for this team.
A lot of it is on PerkZ versus PowerOfEvil. 2,000 gold advantage for PerkZ specifically in the mid lane matchup. 1,500 for Zven over Hansama as well. So we're seeing like one or at least like almost a full item ahead. If you look at the carries on G2 eSports.
Sadly for a character like Syndra, you know, falling behind like this very often means you can't be that threat that one-shots the target. As we've mentioned, it's so crucial here. There are really only two huge damage threats on the side of G2. Gnar, sort of 50-50.
You have to respect him at least.
That's very true.
If you are an AD carry in this meta and you don't have a lot of defensive stats, like these tanks with like Black Cleaver, they actually do kill you in a fight, or at least they force you out of the fight. So you can't just completely ignore them. Let's see what happens here. Misfits, they're under a lot of pressure. G2 eSports are trying to make sure Misfits can't just get a simple 5-on-5 team fight where they can actually try and kite back with Hansama. They want to force Misfits to have to hard engage on them into the Janna, and they get knocked away. Baron being started with the Kalista once again. Misfits around, ready to try and fight.
Getting lower and lower, enough spears in there maybe to secure the engage. Shockwave comes in, Maxlore looking for the fight. Kitty Cats come out, and now the fight has started. MegaNar on the way, and that's two knocked into the wall. Expect gets everything he wants in the exchange. Zven untouched on the back line. He is looking for the Superman impression, still alive as they move forward. Goodbye, Hansama. Goodbye, Misfits. G2 absolutely crushed.
Oh, PowerOfEvil didn't actually get him, but he's still alive for now. PerkZ really wants to kill him. He's on his way. TP from Expect as well.
Moving for a bit more.
Oh, fine.
Checking the wrong push.
He's at the Wolves.
What? No one saw you. What are you? Okay. I mean, at least it looked cool, friend. Threw some spheres out. That.
Another team by though Drakers, where G2 eSports, they're able to use the Janna early and then Expect follows up here on the Gnar. Great ulti again from him, making it so hard for Misfits to kill anyone on the side of G2 eSports.
Only Mithy dies. They finally killed the Janna. But sadly, it looks like it's too little too late. 13K gold lead, 10-4 in the kills, 2 inhibitors now down. This is a matter of walking it down the top lane as a full 5 on G2 and closing this game out.
Let's see it again here. So you can actually see how Misfits are trying to invest a lot of damage onto first Mithy, and then they switch it over to Expect. This is the first disengage, and then the MegaNar comes in. And this is a perfect setup right now for G2, but notice how once Zven actually jumps in without the Janna ulti, he is at risk of dying. But there's then follow-up shields and all that kind of stuff, meaning that Kalista just won't die. And because Misfits never got to like try and kite back and maybe see if they can kill a tank, like it's just impossible to win fights here when you're this far down.
The MegaNar timing from Expect is flawless because you want that MegaNar when to hit the squishier members, to stun them, to lock them up, but to go into mini at the end of the fight when all that's left are a couple tanks to hit, you get those hyper stacks, it's so easy to clean up a fight.
Okay, let's add some more protection to G2's backline. What about a Locket from a tank? That's gonna help. What about a Mikhails from a support as well?
No, it's too much.
Is that too much?
Probably not. Technically, Zven did almost die in the last fight. Maybe Mithy could protect himself now. But really, at this stage, everything that they have is icing on the cake. The Ardent Sensor may have been enough, but having a Mikhails as well means that any of these engages Misfits think they can take will be even harder. Gleaming Quill from IgNar.
I love it. He's trying to steal the red buff. That is the
There's
objective.
A frozen Mallet Gnar. I would call that a little too risky.
I don't know, really? With his rank 1 Q as well.
But the red buff, I mean, would just instantly win them the team fight, right? So
he could use it to, you know, dive in, kites a little bit, I guess.
And Misfits, we wanted to see if they could go toe-to-toe with the top team on the same level. And for the vast majority of the early game, they did. But they needed to win in the early game. They didn't need to go even. Going
even with G2 eSports in the early game is never really winning the early game for these teams. Slowly, PerkZ won his mid lane. Top lane tower went down after Expect and Trick won the 2v2 fight. And then suddenly you find yourself 2,000 gold down and you're like, wait a minute, we were going even. No one is dying. It was 0-0. And yet you are actually behind. Also because G2 eSports comp is just so good in these 5-on-5 team fights.
And it's crazy because very often when we see the Kalista, if she doesn't snowball, things fall apart. Now, admittedly, the Kalista did snowball, but now not building crit chance, not an issue. She has so much protection from other sources. She's just such a constant source of sustained damage.
And then if you are busy killing the Kalista, the 5-1 and 4 Orianna from PerkZ will land a shockwave that takes 80% of your HP, and then life kind of sucks.
And if you're a tank right now, the Gnar is a big threat. Expect has been locked up. Going forward, that's tactics ultimatum. Misfits is their last chance. Can they do it? Zven consistently dishing out damage. PerkZ still alive. Carries uncontested on the back line. That means Maxlore is going to drop. G2 pushing in for the third inhibitor and potentially the game.
We'll get this in here, but at least they got some minions down the bottom lane. Buffing every single one here with the Baron buff. Putting pressure on the tower.
The 1-for-1 so far. Jungler for top laner. Misfits, can they take the fight? Tornado not going to connect. Slowly, steadily burning this down. Misfits need to pick a fight, and they need to pick it now if they want to stay in this game, or they will simply bleed out against G2. Leap forward, the immediate disengage from Mithy. No chance to keep the fight going. The instant turnaround. G2 showing their dominance here in game one. It was favored for them all the way through. Yeah, well, I'm going to assume it's been a strong Mithy. GG to G2. Fantastic game one performance coming in.
Gotta ruin that Janna KDA.
I mean, he gets to pick his exit location, so technically that was Mithy.
Fair enough. That's
not a Tom Kench.
That's a fine point. Good game from G2 Esports, knowing exactly what to do in the early game. Great team fighting from both Mithy and Expect in multiple occasions. One guy being the disengage, the other guy being the engage. And then obviously that sets up the carries on the side of G2 Esports to just go crazy in these fights here. And we said it, you know, like a lot of early game from Misfits is based around Maxlore. He found a few ganks, got a flash, but then never returned. And then no advantage in the bottom lane against the Janna lane either. And not enough happened early on for Misfits to actually get the advantage they needed.
And I gotta say, I want to call Vedius out. G2 gonna get overconfident, gonna drop the first game. That was not the case. They played so patient, so controlled and collected in the early game. They knew they may not have the stronger team. They didn't want to risk anything against the Xayah Rakan lane, and it paid off so well for them coming into the mid game.
Yep, and we got to see one of the points we mentioned as well regarding like Expect and his impact in team fights. Like every single fight here, we said it time and time again, like he did extremely well. I just used one of the caster buzzwords right there, and I realized it as soon as I said it.
Well, G2 took down Misfits Gaming in game one. Let's hear more from our analysts on that win.
Time and time and time again, we see G2 show up. Isn't that right, Deficio? Let's talk a little bit about the early game. It felt to me like G2 just had control over the game. Even though, like, by all metrics, it was even, it just felt to me like G2 were dictating the tempo and making some of the moves. Do you think that's fair to say?
I think it's more about the fact that G2, like, it was very obvious what they wanted to do, right? Like, they have Orianna, they have Kalista, they have Sejuani, like, all these great team fighting materials coming together, especially with the Janna in the bottom lane. When they have this early game go the way they want it, that's what makes you feel like it's in their control, because you know the onus is on Misfits to make plays. And I think the big thing that I really want to highlight is that you do not need an early game jungler to be active in the early game, right? Because if you have lanes like Syndra, if you have Xayah Rakan, and even Camille, you have so many options that can provide the CC for you to follow up, right? And you heard the casters talking about it in-game and how you wanted to see more from Maxlore. I want to talk to you about a quick stat that I found, Quickshot, because I know you've been super passionate about this, and I was inspired. I felt that it's really important that we learn about. I'm glad.
That's why I introduced quick stats.
Right. So, do you know the average jungle proximity of Maxlore during the regular season?
I don't. What is it?
It's 43.7. Do you know what it was in this game?
It's going to be lower, isn't it?
It was lower. In fact, it was 37.9, 6% underneath his usual average, and it just makes you wonder. Why? Because this guy, against all the other bottom teams in Europe, they are able to get these early leads and they're able to snowball. But against the top teams, they just are not proactive in the early game. They are not trying to get this snowball because their laners aren't building their own leads.
So this is something that we were talking about off air as well, is that when Misfits are even or behind, they seem to struggle. They seem to be a little bit lost on the map, and maybe the team fights as well is a reflection of this. We've got this first Baron engage that ended up going quite even, but break down what you're seeing here from the Vedius.
It was super chaotic because I feel like G2 were kind of pinched into a corner because they had to engage onto the front line. You can see that both carries were actually in really good position from Misfits and G2, and it very much became a battle of who can kill the front line first.
Yeah.
And in this initial exchange, you saw that it was actually super even. Both of them were able to kill the tank. They were just like, okay, we trade 1 for 1. It's not a big deal. But a couple of ultis were used, a couple of summoner spells, and then you're thinking, oh, okay, even though Misfits are in a deficit, maybe they can actually win the fight. Maybe they can actually turn things in their favor, especially with this scaling Xayah. But then we saw the fight that G2 were actually able to set up for themselves. And this is very much more of what we expected from G2 eSports. And just look at how the engage happens, because their focus is on the Baron. They use a lot of their ultimates to stop Maxlore getting near the pit. And then the positioning of Zven is super important, because even though he's not doing a huge amount of damage, he's staying alive and he's just slowly stacking up Ren stacks. The Orianna's in a bit of a dangerous spot, but Mithy's providing peel. And Zven, he doesn't die. Handsome and PowerOfEvil overcommit, because they're trying to kill the backline rather than kill the front line. And if the focus of Misfits had just changed to, let's just try and get through expect and trick first and then clean up the backline after, this fight could have gone so very different to how it ended up.
Yeah, but you can't with expect just great wallops again, great crunches. He had a phenomenal performance this game, and it felt like G2 eSports, they got some early leads thanks to PerkZ, the man on your screen, with that laning phase play, but they baited around Baron just so effectively. It really felt like they were forcing Misfits to come towards them, and again, it goes back to something I was saying earlier, just G2 in control, especially in the mid to late game.
They were definitely dictating the pace, and it makes you wonder how different the game could have been if we just saw a little bit more activity from Maxlore, trying to utilize these strong laners that he did have.
I was inspired. I really am impressed. I think you nailed that quick stat. I'm a little jealous, actually, that the stats team gave it to you instead of me, but I'll forgive them for that one, as I'm in the host role. But Mr. Vedius, Mr. Quick Stat Delivery Man, yes. Maxlore, the man that has had some of the boldest statements in the EU LCS. How does he turn this around? Because you thought Misfits could take a game off G2.
I just want him to do stuff. It was the same against Fnatic game 1. We were all like, what are you guys doing? Why aren't you being more active? You guys even had the gold lead, yet you didn't try and force anything. Yeah. And it's just like, I want to see some cojones. I want to see these guys literally go out and say, let's just go. Let's take the pen, throw it at the wall, make stuff happen. So I just want to see them trying to be more active, because they have the tools, but it feels like that they don't know how to work it. Like they've got a spanner and they're trying to take a door off. I don't know, Trevor.
So what you actually want to see is you want to see the bravado, the gutsiness we see in our videos, that we see in the hype pieces, but on the Rift and actually delivering.
That's what I want to see.
Is it going to happen in game 2?
I hope so.
That is not the answer. I want a yes or no. Will it happen in game 2?
Probably not.
Okay, well, there we go. That wraps up game 1. Yeah, G2 are fighting to stay in the race for first place. We'll see if they can close it out when we return.
Trev, go get my pen, please.